What's up, basketball fans? Welcome to the Warriors Report. Yes, I still make YouTube videos. I was away with my family for about a month in India. My programs were giving me a little bit of trouble, which is why I couldn't record there. But I'm back. It's exciting to be recording, and I'm not recording in person because, as you know, when you travel with your family, there's suitcases lying all over the place when you come back from vacation. So I'll be back to recording in person in a few days or so. But it's time to talk about Jeff Dowtin because it was announced that the Toronto Raptors will not convert Jeff Dowtin's two-way contracts for the remainder of the regular season, play-in tournament, and playoffs. It's an odd move considering how Dowtin Jr. has helped the team down the stretch. And obviously, this was a very controversial move. A lot of people are blaming the front office, but there's a deeper reason as to why the Toronto Raptors did not sign Jeff Dowtin, and I will go into that in today's video. So if you're ready to watch, make sure to give it a thumbs up. If you wish to hit the subscribe button as well, that'd be very much appreciated. So with that being said, let's get into today's video. Now, as you guys know, I do like to give out shout outs for my videos, and the shout out for today's video goes out to Joshua Pace. So Joshua, thank you so much for supporting this channel through your likes and comments. It is very much appreciated. Now let's talk about why the Raptors ultimately decided not to convert Jeff Dowtin's two-way contract, which would make him eligible to play in the play-in and also the playoffs. Now, the real reason I think the Raptors did not convert him is obvious. There's obviously a lot of tension going on between the front office and Nick Nurse. For those who do not believe me, go watch Masai Ujiri's press conference after the NBA trade deadline. He said something along the lines of, when asked about bench players, he said, yes, we wish they played more, but it is what it is, which obviously tells you that Masai Ujiri wants some of the guys to play, but clearly Nick Nurse is more so focused on winning rather than development. Now, you're probably wondering, what does this have to do with Jeff Dowtin? I think it's quite obvious. If you do not get it still, it's stating that Masai Ujiri still wants to see guys like Delano Banton and Malachi Flynn play. Now, obviously, there's been a lot of questions as to why the Raptors did not. I think this is the real reason. And for those who are maybe quick to dismiss this, hear me out for just 1 second. When the Raptors played Malachi Flynn for a good amount of games in the middle of the season there, why was Malachi Flynn getting minutes? It was because the Raptors had decided to send Jeff Dowtin down to the Raptors G League 905, which is why you saw Malachi Flynn playing. And I think that was one of the reasons why they actually sent him down. It wasn't more so that Jeff Dowtin needs reps. He's someone who's been in the NBA for quite some time. It was more of to kind of get him out of the way so we could see some of the players a little bit more like Delano Banton, like Malachi Flynn as well. Obviously, we didn't get to see Delano Banton as much, but this is obvious. And for those who may disagree, I highly recommend you watch a movie called Moneyball. And in Moneyball, it essentially goes to some of the struggles you don't see behind the scenes as fans, where general managers are telling coaches to play certain guys, but coaches do not believe in them. And I think this is clearly the case with Masai Ujiri and Nick Nurse as well, which is why we saw Nick Nurse play the starter such heavy minutes last year as a way of kind of rebelling against the front office's decision not to provide a lot of good bench pieces and ultimately force them to get Thaddeus Young as well. So obviously there's a lot of talk as to why Fred VanVleet plays a lot of heavy minutes. I truly believe is because the front office is not that the front office is stupid. It's not that they don't know that Jeff Dowtin is a good player. It's more so because they want to evaluate some of the young talent like Malachi Flynn. They want to see what they have in Delano Banton as well. But Nick Nurse not letting these guys play makes it a lot more challenging for the front office to kind of determine their future with the team as well. So I think this will be it. Obviously, this doesn't necessarily mean that Malachi Flynn or Delano Banton will be seeing minutes, but a lot of people have come into question about why Fred VanVleet continues to play such heavy minutes. I honestly think it's not because Nick Nurse loves him as much as many people believe. I think it's more so to do with the fact that, you know what, he's absolutely going to refuse to play Delano or Malachi Flynn at the backup position, and he'll play Fred VanVleet 40 minutes if he has to. And look, it is what it is. Obviously, there's a lot of discussions about maybe Nick Nurse leaving the Raptors. There's obviously a lot of discussions about the Toronto Raptors maybe moving on from Nick Nurse. And I think that's the reason why Nick Nurse is focused so much on winning, whereas the front office still wants to develop some other players as well. So I think by not converting Jeff Dowtin, this was a clear message that the front office is sending to the head coach that, you know what, we will do anything in our power to not give you a backup point guard. And we will force you to play guys like Malachi Flynn. Again, this is just again, I'm not stating that this is going to definitely get Delano Banton or Malachi Flynn minutes, obviously in the play-in or the playoffs as well. But I think this is definitely one of those messages that the front office is sending the head coach, which is, honestly, I truly believe they're ready to part ways during the offseason. And also, I think, look, with all due respect to Jeff Dowtin, I really like him as well. But taking a look at his statistics here, people have come to realize that, you know, the season's bad when people are upset about, you know, a 13th, 14th bench player not making the roster where he can't play in the play-in or playoffs. You know, like, with all due respect, he got some time with the Magic. He played 19 minutes. Look at his statistics, man. I'm not saying that Jeff Dowtin does not deserve a contract. Do not misunderstand the situation. I would love for him to be on the Raptors, but I think it's one of those cases as well. Like, who are you cutting right now? You're not cutting Delano Banter and Malachi Flynn. You're really not, because those players are not finished products and you still need to see what you have with them. And then you're obviously not cutting Will Barton. You just picked him up during the buyout market. What message does that send to future buyout market candidates that may be looking at the Toronto Raptors? And then you're not going to waive Joe Wieskamp because you just signed him to a contract. So, like, really, where are you creating that extra roster spot? Look, I know obviously there could be arguments made that Joe Wieskamp, they probably signed him too quickly, but maybe he's a hot commodity at that time. I don't know. Look, we'll see what happens with him and his future. But obviously, a lot of people are feeling upset about Jeff Dowtin not being converted from that two-way contract. I'm very curious to hear your thoughts. I mean, the Raptors still do have about, I believe it was April 10th, which is the cutoff date. So they still do have 3 days to decide their final roster, but we'll see what happens. I'm also going to talk about Nick Nurse as well, because there's been so many rumors and I didn't really get a chance to talk about him, and obviously Ime Udoka as well. Now, it's actually being reported by NBA Central today that the Houston Rockets are not expected to bring back Steven Silas after this season. According to Jake Fisher, Nick Nurse and Scott Brooks have been mentioned as potential candidates to replace Silas. Now, obviously, there's so much to talk about Nick Nurse here. I know people feel like Ime Udoka is the best replacement, and look, I love Ime Udoka as well, and I absolutely love him to the point where I actually, once I saw the Celtics hire him last season, I said this is going to be a wonderful signing. Obviously, the Celtics didn't start the season last year as they had hoped, but clearly it paid off for them. Now, I do want to warn a lot of fans that may be thinking that Ime Udoka is going to come in and immediately change the Raptors. He's actually cut from the same cloth as Nick Nurse. He's a very strong-headed head coach. He's a defensive-minded head coach as well. Now, I'm not saying he's worse than Nick Nurse, but I think he definitely benefited from having a superstar like Jason Tatum on his team. But the one thing I really liked about Ime Udoka last season, when I followed the Celtics closely, was he held his players accountable, which is something you're not really seeing with Nick Nurse as well. So I think that's the one difference you see with Ime Udoka. I mean, Nick Nurse, he does hold players accountable, but it doesn't seem like every player is being held accountable. We can all agree on that, right? So I think with Ime Udoka, he's not afraid to call out players. I remember one game where there's actually a little story that came out where it said Marcus Smart was playing horrible, and Marcus Smart was pulled to the sidelines by Ime, and he cursed him out, saying, "What the F are you doing? You need to play better defense." So again, there's going to be some differences, but if you're expecting Ime Udoka to come in and all of a sudden magically develop our players, guys, I will say he's not going to do that as well. So that's what I got to see about Nick Nurse. Obviously, it's been frustrating with Nick Nurse that he hasn't played some of the young guys, but do you really blame Nick Nurse all that much? Look, I know people are going to say, well, we developed Norman Powell. We had Pascal Siakam, who's the 27 pick. We drafted Fred VanVleet, undrafted. But taking into consideration our previous draft picks like Terrence Davis, Jalen Harris, and then Terrence Davis, Jalen Harris, and then Justin Champagnie, who obviously wanted out from the Toronto Raptors. Those are 3 guys that we could have developed. Unfortunately, 2 of those situations just were off-court issues, which unfortunately, the Raptors had to let go of those players. And then obviously Justin Champagnie as well, just for whatever reason, I don't know if his attitude, whatever it was, he seemed like he didn't want to be on the Raptors anymore. So those are just 3 examples of the Raptors, look, not having guys they could have potentially developed in the guard position, right? So, and also you just got to come to a realization, like the Raptors haven't had that many first-round picks in the last, 3-4 seasons since they won the NBA championship. They had Scottie Barnes in the first round. They had Malachi Flynn, who was the 29th pick, so essentially a second-round draft pick. So again, they haven't really had a lot of first-round picks, which is hard to develop, right? So obviously the Raptors have been trading a lot of first-round picks as well, but I don't think you can entirely blame Nick Nurse for a lack of development, but I will say Nick Nurse does need to have a little bit more faith in the bench and play some of the young players as well. So that's all I got to say about that, guys. We'll go more into the details about Nick Nurse's head coaching duties and potential replacements during the offseason, but I'm very curious to hear your thoughts about Jeff Dowtin and this whole situation, which seems very complicated. So again, leave your thoughts down in the comment section below. And as always, I do have a trivia question for you today. And the trivia question is, which Toronto Raptors player has the highest defensive win shares this season? Is it A, Jakob Poeltl? Is it B, Precious Achiuwa? Is it C, OG Anunoby? Is it D, Pascal Siakam? Or E, Scottie Barnes? So whoever answers this trivia question correctly first in the comment section gets a shout out in my next video. So that will be it for today's video, guys. Thank you so much for watching this video, and I hope you guys have yourselves a great day.